Within 5 years, sovereign wealth funds will be around $10 trillion. It's enough to make you wonder what they are and what they actually do. The massive state-owned investment funds, which often make their money from gas and oil, are naturally secretive things, naturally. But in this age of the credit crunch, they may well be riding to our rescue. Our economics editor, Stephanie Flanders, reports.
The credit crunch has had its villains, but also its white knights. Massive state-owned investment funds that have risen up out of the desert, many of them, to bail out American banks. Pretty handy, all things considered. But some wonder whether the money comes with strings attached.
In the last 9 months, sovereign wealth funds have injected more than $70 billion into Western banks. $7 billion of that's come from Dubai. And there have been other high-profile purchases. P&O, a big chunk of Standard Chartered Bank, maybe one of these days, Liverpool Football Club, who knows? We do know if the oil price stays high, the buying power of these funds is only going to grow.
Worldwide, sovereign wealth funds are thought to have about $2.8 trillion to invest, slightly more than Britain's entire GDP. By 2012, the IMF thinks that will grow to $10 trillion, partly because of the rise in the price of oil. Oil and gas-related funds already account for about $2 trillion, or 72% of the total. If the oil price stays at $100 a barrel, the Gulf states alone could have an extra $3.8 trillion by 2012.
I've come here to find out how the petro funds are planning to invest all that money around the world. But the first lesson I had to learn was that no one wants anything to do with the words sovereign wealth.
If you look at the press that sovereign wealth funds have been attracting in the last few months, it has not been very favorable. And as a result, people have hesitations about using those terms. They become to connote things which is different from what these funds were originally set up for.
It's not the only thing they're wary about. By and large, they don't like to give much away.
Their lack of openness is one of the things that makes people suspicious about the sovereign wealth funds. Behind me in this big silver building is the headquarters of the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, by far the biggest sovereign wealth fund in the world. We think they've got about $800 billion to play with, but no one really knows for sure, and no one in there ever talks. In fact, we've had trouble getting any of the funds out here to talk to us. That's one problem. The other, of course, is they're all owned by foreign governments.
Dubai got a rude awakening in 2005 when a government-owned company bought P&O and tried to take charge of its port operations in the US. It didn't go down well at all.
In the post-9/11 world, port security is too important an issue to be treated so cavalierly.
I just want to make sure that they are folks who are going to be vigilant with respect to the security of the cargo that comes in here.
Dubai gave up that fight pretty quickly. For the chief economist of one Dubai investment fund, it sent a discouraging message.
The message that we always used to get was that you have to be more open and globalized, right? And the countries of the region took that message clearly on board. They've opened up their economies. Their capital accounts and current accounts have always been open. And now that they want to invest assets, people now tell them, globalization can only go one way. We cannot have that.
They're not just foreign governments, but undemocratic, most of them. These funds don't give much away. That's one of the things that makes people nervous. Many worry they'll become an extension of government policy. The IMF, George Bush and the European Commission are all calling for greater transparency and codes of conduct to keep governments in their proper place, all of which smells like double dealing around here.
Let's look at the major funds that have been active. You've got private equity funds, you've got hedge funds, you've got lots of investment funds. Now, we don't request those to be transparent and open. And if you want greater transparency and disclosure, then that has to be a general rule as opposed to being something specific and directed at the sovereign wealth funds.
You can see their point. After all, it's not their fault they're so rich.
Countries create these funds because when you're making a fortune out of oil or another commodity boom, it's hard to invest all that money at home, especially in the desert. But here in Abu Dhabi, they're having a blooming good try.
This will be the largest Guggenheim museum in the world, designed by Frank Gehry. What you see.
Abu Dhabi is pouring money into making their happiness island the magnet for culture vultures in 10 or 20 years' time. It may sound mad, but there'll be a Guggenheim museum designed by Frank Gehry, a performing arts centre by Zaha Hadid, and a branch of the Louvre, not to mention a Warner Brothers theme park and 11 miles of sandy beach.
What makes you think, if you build all these things in the middle of the desert, that anyone will come to see it?
We are sure people will come. I was talking to the GM of the Louvre the other day, and he said, I'm interviewing people to work for the Louvre in Paris, but 90% of the people I met were asking me, can we move and work in the Louvre in Abu Dhabi in the future? So we are sure, I mean, this is going to bring visitors from all over the world, people interested in art and architecture.
These plans are all about investing for a time after oil, and so are the foreign investment funds. That's why people here say the funds are unlikely to use their money for political ends.
These are countries which are producing now a non-renewable product, which is the hydrocarbon resources, and which would like to use some of the proceeds to develop the countries, but some of the proceeds to set aside in order to create a source of income for the country for when this non-renewable resource runs out. If this is your objective, I don't see why you would necessarily then move into active management.
But others think their ambitions will inevitably expand in line with their wealth, especially when it comes to strategic investments to boost their own economies.
There is a sense of these funds coming into their own because they are getting to be such critical mass and such critical scale, and they're wanting to expand their footprint in the global capital market, which of course means not just deepening any one asset base, but expanding across all asset bases.
I don't think you have to worry about sovereign wealth funds seizing control of your ATM. But here's something you should worry about. With all the billions, trillions of dollars flowing into these
we have seen over the last crisis that they didn't always make the wisest decisions.
They are very conscious of the fact that the last great oil bonanza of the 70s was frittered away.
At that time, we called the oil revenues petrodollars. They merely transited through the economies of the region and then were redeployed outside the region. The bottom line was that the region didn't benefit much from the petrodollars because you simply did not have the absorptive capacity. So I think the absorptive capacity, both on the economic side as well as on the financial side, is greatly strengthened, has been greatly strengthened in the past few years, allowing the countries of the region to benefit from these financial resources.
This place has come a long way in a short time. When the oil started flowing here in the 50s, Abu Dhabi's main industries were fishing and pearl diving, and the real estate choice was between a house made of mud or reeds. Now their biggest problem is how to invest all their money without alienating the West.
Every time somebody in this world starts accumulating a large pie, everybody starts getting very nervous about what they're going to do with it. A few years ago it was about China. In the early 90s and the late 80s, it was about Japan. And in the 70s, it was about OPEC. So I think generally we all become very curious when there is a large accumulation of wealth. And we wonder how people are going to use it.
These funds aren't going to go away, nor are the governments behind them. And when the West is less short of cash, you can bet all the suspicious questions will return. But right now, the main feeling is they and their billions couldn't have come at a better time.